welcome back to all. In the first round table, we spoke about mindset of innovation. Just now, we focus our attention on the ways to generate innovation, how to deployment innovation. We're talking about this with Nancy J. Levy, founder and managing partner, BioHealth Management. Tuka Ilalati, I hope my pronunciation is right, and Access Helsinki and CIO Mesensei. And then welcome back to Roberta Gilardi, CIO Gravity. I
Ciao, ciao.
would start. I let's start with Nancy Levy, and I would ask to her what is your vision and your experience concerning role of the cities and their connection to innovation ecosystems, both in US and Europe, please.
That's a very good question. Again, I wanted to say thank you for inviting me here to discuss these topics. I think they're very critical. I do a lot of work in Europe, and I live in Boston, Massachusetts. But I work a lot in Europe with entrepreneurs as well as with the ecosystems that are in Europe. And the city that I would talk about in the United States, because I know it the best, is of course Boston, which is where I've really grown up from a business perspective. And when I came here to Boston to train in the 80s, there wasn't much innovation. And what I've watched is as the innovation ecosystem grew, all the different stakeholders realized that it was only good for them to actually be involved with the growth of the innovation ecosystem in Boston. So one by one, you could see each of the different stakeholders get involved. I would say the first one, which is really the reason that the ecosystem is here, were the universities. That was simple because the universities is where a lot of the innovation is actually coming from, and also the hospitals and medical schools. So they got involved right away because, again, they were the creators. And then the city got involved because they said, well, if we support the ecosystem, perhaps there will be job growth. Perhaps we will be able to create money for our citizens as well as for ourselves that then can be used. Perhaps if we invest, then we'll get more companies moving into the Boston area. So they started doing some tax subsidies, and they started also to support innovation. They set up in the life sciences $1 billion fund to support those kinds of activities. They also set up funds to help companies come into Boston and into the innovation ecosystem. So they've been financially involved for a long time, but they wanted to be involved because it was important to them and they saw the real value that it would add in Boston. Keep in mind that Boston and Silicon Valley are very different innovation ecosystems. They're old. This one started in about 1980, and so did Silicon Valley. In contrast to many of the others in the United States, they aren't as sophisticated, and they certainly are not as old. So you have to keep that in mind when you're comparing to what's going on in Europe. So in contrast, in Europe, it's a little bit different from my perspective. And that is, I would say the ecosystems are a little bit younger. And the one that I usually use is Spain because I know it the best, but we could use Italy as well, where they didn't start when the United States started. They didn't start when Boston started. Let's say maybe they started really getting organized 20 years ago, which would have been 2000, which isn't bad. But we still had like 40 years on them. So that's a lot of time. And if you think about what's going on in Europe, I think it really depends on the country that you're looking at. And each country, I believe, is interested, and each city is interested potentially in supporting innovation, but they don't necessarily have the means to do it because financially it's a different situation. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be involved. The stakeholders should be involved, but instead of perhaps giving money, which they can't do, perhaps they can give in-kind services like land, which they've done a lot of throughout Europe, to help start the innovation ecosystems. And I'd like to say that comparing the US and to Europe isn't really fair, because I think that Europe has been working very hard to increase its innovation ecosystems in every country. And I think it's not necessarily that you need to raise more money or that the cities need to give more money, but that everyone needs to come together, which I think is happening to support new innovations in Europe.
Uh, Excuse me, Nancy. Do you have an idea if there is a better way to make innovation system? Do you think is the better way in US or in Europe?
I don't think either one is better. I think they're both culturally appropriate. So you have to really think about who is the US and who is Europe. And if you do that and you separate them, you realize that Europe is doing a great job. It doesn't cost as much to build a company in Europe. So why do they need to raise so much money? They think about, oh, let's build a billion-dollar company in the US. Well, there are very few billion-dollar companies in the US. It's not that Silicon Valley is that great. It looks like it because they do a great job at advertising. From my perspective, in Europe, they've done a very good job at helping entrepreneurs locally to move forward. Have they become large companies? Not necessarily. But in reality, many of them also don't want to become large companies. They're much more interested culturally in staying within their own area. So they don't necessarily want to move around. In the US, we are used to moving around. We leave our families. We really don't have those kinds of attachments. So we're much more mobile. Where Europe has grown and is growing right now, I think it's just a different system, and it should be measured based on European metrics, not based on US metrics.
So you think, do you think that there is the possibility that these different ecosystems can work together?
I absolutely think the two ecosystems can work very well together. And the reason I think that is because there are lots of people like myself that are Americans, but we do a lot in Europe, and we're good at translating what's going on, and vice versa. There are lots of Europeans working in the US, and they're translating. And that's a lot of what we do. It's not translating language. It's translating culture. It's translating how do we think, how do you guys think? And so how do we all think together to succeed? And in the US, everyone is really out to help other people in general. That was a general statement. So it's not as if we would say, oh, it's a European company, I'm not going to help that company. They would just say, if this is a good company, they have good management, we're going to support them and help them grow. So, and I think it's the same in Europe. I don't think there's any stopping a good entrepreneur and a good innovation.
Many thanks. I'm agree with you, and we have a similar outfit. It's so fun. This.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, there's snow on the ground here, but I thought if I acted like I was on the Mediterranean, perhaps we will get some sun. So.
Okay. Okay. Many thanks. Thanks, Nancy. I would ask to Tuka. Hi. Startups are one of the most important pillars of innovation ecosystem. In your vision and your experience, how can startups they take part in building an attractive city able to change the life of its inhabitants and open the way to a city that can improve the wellness of the citizen? Please.
That's a very good question. It's also a huge question. So maybe I break it down to few elements. If I come from my background and from my experience, I started my career in corporate world. I started as a consultant for digital services, mobile services and platforms, specifically servicing corporate giants like Nokia, which was huge at the time in Finland. And quite quickly, I understood that there was a lot of talk about innovation and how innovation is the driving force of the corporates and so forth and so forth. But I quite soon realized that it's really not. Innovations seem to be sort of reduced down to processes and sort of bitter infighting between different teams and verticals within the corporate, who gets to do what and who owns what and so forth. And in the fast-moving digital world, at least it was quite quickly to see that while the corporate is still making decision who gets to do what, 3 months has been passed, or 6 months, or 9 months, and the opportunity window has already been closed. Others were faster to do something that was there as an opportunity, and the corporates just watch things go by left, right, and center, and never seizing the initiative, never seizing the kind of like an opportunity. And in comes the startup scene. So in early 2000, digital industry was full of solo entrepreneurs and teams looking to make the next killer app. And there are many opinions and views on what came of it. All sorts of things came from these killer app hunts. Some successes, some spectacular failures, but the genie was out of the bottle, that is for sure. With the startups and innovation culture that startup represented, the idea that you have an entrepreneur and a team, dedicated, skillful people doing amazing stuff became very inspirational. And at least in Finland, we saw a complete transformation of the innovation scene in around 2010, 2015, because before the startup scene became huge in Helsinki and before it became influential, Finland as a culture, we were not particularly interested about entrepreneurship or innovation. We were more interested about forest industry, the machineries, all the traditional stack industries that you can imagine, and the most talented pool of the people. If you would take 600 best students from a school and you would ask them that how many of you want to be an entrepreneurs, there would be 3 hands, and 2 of them would be foreign, and only 1 Finn would be going like, yeah, I want to be a startup entrepreneur. So, but then with the boom of the startup scene, especially powered by our connections from Helsinki to innovation hubs in MIT and Stanford in Silicon Valley, and to Cambridge, UK, we started to get the understanding that how to inspire innovation, entrepreneurship, and new ways of creating services. And consequently, it also became a thing for the city as a sort of a prestige factor. When Helsinki started to see its first unicorns, especially mobile gaming industry, Rovio became huge. People all over the world were interested to know that what's going on in Finland in the gaming scene. Why do we produce 2 huge gaming giants like Rovio and Supercell? So then obviously City got on board, and I think as the last point to this fairly long introduction is that if you look at the future of the work, if you look at the universities, students graduating from universities, if you contrast to the experience 20 years ago when only 1 wanted to be an entrepreneur, now it's substantially higher. And the reason is quite clear. The corporates are no longer the sort of driving force in the same way in employment. The corporate careers are kind of like gone. So everybody understands that if I want to make something for myself, it's best to do as an entrepreneur. And then you have entrepreneurs, then you have startups, and then you have innovation, all in a neat package. And for the cities, it always means that if it has a vibrant startup scene, if it has vibrant innovation ecosystem, it means opportunities, growth, well-being, everything.
Excuse me, Tuka, can you explain, if you want, if there is a role of the institution, local institution or central institution, to promote innovation and create a path where startup can develop? Above all, in a country like Finland.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And if we think about it as an evolution, I think the innovation scene and startup scene in Helsinki got started in spite of the universities, in spite of the city, in spite of all the other institutions, in spite of the corporates. But it would have never happened without them. So if we think about what kicked it all off for us was obviously huge success of Nokia. It created gravity around mobile technologies, artificial intelligence, mobile gaming, and all the industries that are servicing these kind of competencies. And then the drivers were actually the grassroots. It was the students who went to US to learn the models for setting up entrepreneurship societies, like the one that I'm now representing here as one hat on my. So in Helsinki, in high schools and universities, we have this thing called Entrepreneurship Society, and it's an open society to inspire students to become entrepreneurs and start working on their programs. And MIT and Stanford were the places we kind of copied it from. But then moving on forward to today, when that scene became successful, then the universities and cities got on board. And for example, Aalto University, which is one of the top universities in innovation, very close to Nokia geographically, only like a few kilometers apart, started investing in innovation campuses. So they set up Startup Sauna, acceleration program, gave funding to the students, and now they dedicated an entire building to create an innovation or startup incubator hub for the teams of Espoo. And at the same time, Helsinki, which is another city just connected to Espoo and Otaniemi, where these institutions are located, set it up its own startup center, which they want to build to be the biggest in the Nordics in the numbers of teams and so forth. So essentially, the grassroots movement gave the scene, gave the birth to Finland, and then cities and institutions then help it scale. And I think there's a great analogy here with corporate innovation, in a sense that corporates, I think, are terrible in innovating things, but they are absolutely vital in scaling up and making innovations to happen and to grow, because five-man startup on a bootstrap that can never compete with a corporate. But that's not the point. The point is that there are different stages of the evolution. I think more and more we are seeing these types of open innovation ecosystems forming, where you have the innovation happening in an open innovation ecosystem, and then the corporates are there looking at what teams, what people, what ideas should they be on board to scale up. And I think that is the latest and best kind of like symbiotic relationship between the startups, the corporates, the research institutions, the universities, and then the cities. And it's no longer who leads the game. It's about collaboration and open innovation ecosystems that I think are winning the game.
Many thanks. This is very interesting. This is your underlines to interconnection between a corporate, startup, institution, and school, university, and the other. Many thanks. Roberta Gilardi, CIO Gravity. Come back to make a thought about LT City. LT City is a city to provide a wellness environment for its citizens, not only providing healthcare services. What is your idea, and what can we do to allow the city to make social innovation, to become a driver to social innovation?
Well, thank you, Federica, and thanks again to Nancy and Tuka for being with us today. Well, coming to the fact that health is, as we said in the first session, health is something complicated, is a complex word. If we come to the role of the city, I think that an healthy and health city could be really a powerful tool for prevention, for example. It's not just a matter of mobility, okay, sustainability, okay, but it's also, I think, the chance that now we have also to rethink some processes and approaches in order to connect better the innovation that is coming out in some places in the city. For example, as Nancy and Tuca said before, in specific ecosystem. For example, here near Milan, we are seeing in the expo area the creation of a new center and the human technopole, which would be and could be really an interesting and attractive point for this area. But I think we have to understand how innovation ecosystem can affect more and more, and not only in terms of the real, obviously, economic effect on the environment, more jobs, more interaction, and so on. Maybe we have to move forward and to see how what's come out from this kind of ecosystem could positively affect the life, everyday life. So I think that a city like Milan, now we are also facing the challenge of the 15 minutes city. So in 15 minutes you reach out everything you need in your area. But it's not just the availability of services, and is something more, I think, is rethinking rethinking how to connect the social environment that we have, for example, around our hub here. We are in an historic building. It was at the beginning of the 30s, in the last century, was a factory. And this area it has been a lot of transformation. So we saw the transformation and the changes happening, but I think we have to face more and to be more to give more attention to people's needs. If we want to have an health city, it's not a business attraction, it's not only business attraction, it's not only the real estate growth of a city like Milan that can also exclude some people from this kind of growth. Yes, we saw the city the changes. For example, a lot of new skyscrapers and a lot of new buildings and residential and very expensive residential areas. But what about the surrounding? What about people that every day is facing, especially in this difficult moment due to the pandemic? So I think that innovation have also or must have or could have a role also in leverage on everything and bringing new ideas and experimentation to the city level. And obviously an healthy city, as I said before, could be really a powerful tool for health prevention, because less pollution, more green, more sustainability, etc. Obviously could bring people to all the population what they need to be healthy and stay healthy.
I want to ask you, I don't know who wants to answer to this question, but I would know if, in your opinion, if the pandemic can transformate the way to make and to make innovation and to make business, for example. Tuca, do you want to answer for the first? Okay. We cannot hear.
We can't hear you. Tuca, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Now, you hear me?
Okay.
You hear me now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is certainly
Now
one
we
transformation that has happened. So, Yeah, just about half an hour before I joined the panel, I was reading through an article which was saying that what are the real impacts of COVID, and one fundamental shift is our relationship with an office. It's sort of like since 1700 or something, it's been the centerpiece for all the kind of like work, and now it's gone. And if we look at proximity and the idea of proximity, that has been transformed with the pandemic. I'm just as far or as close to Boston and Milan as I am across the street because nobody can move anywhere. And that has created an immense amount of new connections. And we have learned to do ways to connect in ways that were unimaginable before COVID. I mean, like me getting on board, for example, on this panel would just probably not have happened unless I would have been physically in Milan. It would have been unimaginable. But now it's becoming normal. And the second point that the authors made was that because we are letting go the office and office-centric view, the role of workspaces has become fluid. And I already experienced this before COVID. We participated in one innovation program by EU, and we had boot camps. We picked up our team executives and stayed for 2 weeks in a single place, in a new location, learning about the local challenges and opportunities and really worked there. So we were not attached to the office, but we were attached to a mission, and that mission could be carried out anywhere almost. You'll take a boot camp somewhere in Milan, and next you are working from Amsterdam, and you are part of still the same network of the people, but the people are different. And I think that's something that certainly didn't exist when I started my career. Everything was much more centralized, and the idea that there is a Nokia headquarter means that Nokia-related things, the mobile-related things, are then in the offices nearby to it. But this is no longer the case. So I find this really exciting, and I think it's a really important point what Nancy was making, that US teams are really good at moving around, and Europeans tend to be staying local. And if something, I would really want the COVID to push us to understand that the opportunity for a Helsinki-based team can be found actually from Milan, and the people working from Milan can find an opportunity from Amsterdam, and this virtual way of doing things, the virtualization that happened because of COVID, maybe the outcome is that Europe learns to be more mobile, similar to how US is very good at being mobile and being where the opportunity is. That's my first intuition, based on half an hour reflection on a very interesting piece.
Many thanks. Nancy, in your opinion, how pandemic is transforming the way to make innovation, to make business, and how can they transform also the ecosystems?
I agree completely with everything that's been said. The only comment I would make, I've always traveled a lot for business, and I've always used Zoom, but I've clearly in the last year on Zoom all the time. There's really something different between Zoom and my meeting someone and my actually getting to know someone and really understanding them and working with them. So from my perspective, I think we will still be traveling, but just as you said, we will be envisioning a different world where people maybe go in the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week, etc. And the impact, I think, on ecosystems is really just as he said, and it may help enormously in Europe. I don't think, and I don't want Italians to leave Italy to do business if they don't want to, because I think it's a great thing that people want to stay in their country. I think it's great. But now, just as he said, perhaps they will be more mobile, but maybe that mobility is really going to be electronic mobility and virtual mobility. And then, just as he said, then perhaps it will also get around a lot of the problems in Europe. One problem being every country has different tax situations, etc. Perhaps we can get over some of these differential things that have kept people apart, because we're not going to necessarily physically be in that country, but maybe we just will be working with that country in a new way, and maybe it'll be product-based, not company-based. So I could see that happening as well, where there might, it may break down some of the barriers that exist because it's going to be virtual. And that would be fabulous, I think, for the whole continent.
Roberta, in your opinion, what is your opinion about these items? And can you focus the attention on the transformation in Italy related to ecosystem, make innovation? What's happening right now?
Well, I totally agree with what Nancy and Tuka said before. So I think that the pandemic, if we could see a positive effect as breaking down some ceilings and some barriers, revealing us that it's possible, for example, to make what we are doing each day more fluid in terms of space, time, and relation with people, even if we are very hungry of being back on the physical layer, because I think this is very important. You miss a lot of the relation when you are a barrier that is the screen. Technology help us a lot in this moment. Think about the same pandemic 20 years ago or something like that. So we have some advantages from the technologies and technology layer that we are living, but I think that we also have to take the experience that we have done during the pandemic, and the pandemic is still on, is not ended, and to move forward and understand that, as Nancy said before, we can work in a collaborative and in an open way, gathering differences and making them a base for new values, for new ideas, so we can work guided by ideas and vision, and then working with teams different, learning from each other. And that's why when at the beginning I thought about the G-Gravity project, I thought it was important, and it was slightly before the start of the pandemic in January last year. And we already had the idea of having an hybrid hub. So the idea to connect the physical aspect to the digital aspect, and also to be natively cross-border. That's why we are here today with Nancy and Tuka, for example. I get in contact with Tuka by chance, because I was looking for something, for a platform, for a tool that could enable us to do the digital project. So it was by chance, but now we're in contact, we are in relation, we are working on the project. And so I think this is a big enrichment for us, for both of us, and for Gravity, because we can exchange, and we don't speak just of the project. When we meet on Zoom, for example, we exchange information, but also we exchange experience and point of views. So I think this is also a new way to look at our time. We have more time, and we work also a lot more, maybe, but we have more time because sometimes we have less movement. So if we don't move too much, we have maybe more time for thinking, for example. Even if I'm always in the office, but each day, because I think it's important also to be here in this moment, and so not to work from home, for example. But I think this is a great value. And so collaboration is difficult. Collaboration, everyone speaks about collaboration, but it's very difficult to then put in place a real collaboration, because we have to have a mediation, to understand other needs, and to be open first of all, to be open. And so behind our project, okay, is a business project. Obviously, we want to work with corporates and companies and startups and other ecosystem, okay. But behind the project, there is a vision. There's a vision that we want to carry on, and so we want to have the pleasure to work with other people and to exchange, and not to be just in our walled garden trying to struggle with the situation. In Italy, yes, we are facing. I think we are facing a big change. We are going to face a big change. We have the chance to take the right way, and so to also to work on our mindset and to work not only on an economic layer, because I think that if we want to succeed as a country in building up a new Italy, a more aware country, in which people don't have to move abroad in order to realize their dreams, or simply to find a job, and or the differences we still have from south to north. I think we have the chance to move forward and take what is going on with the Next Generation EU fund that is going to arrive, and to finance project, etc. But we have to also to invest a lot in, as I said before, in education, in bringing people to a new level of awareness, I think. So this is the difficult, the main difficult we have is changing mind, and it's not just a matter of economy, is something more. And I think this is really a very also delicate moment, is also a fragile moment for us. So we have to find the direction as a country, and also because Italy as a country has a lot of things that can express in terms of innovation and research, and not only in terms of beauty. And we thought the word how beauty is, but then we are still sometimes sitting on the ancient time without thinking that the world has moved forward. And we have to do this with our culture, and looking at our heritage and our origins, but with a new vision and with new awareness.
Thanks. But there are many firms that we can say that there is a firm. How we can help them to promote innovation and help them to transformate their way to operate.
Well, I think that what we can do, for example, I think that there is a big role that association and industrial association can do if they want. Sometimes they work on some issue, but they don't, in my experience, work enough on creating this kind of environment. I think that we have to start from this, so to create the condition of an experience of sharing our experience and doing things together is not easy, because especially in Italy we have a lot of good companies, but very small or isolated, and it's not so easy for them to work with other companies. And there is a limit in consider the co-petition instead of competition, for example. Even if we have an history, in an industrial history that, for example, through what we call the distretti industriali, as industrial district has done a lot in the past. So I think we have to rethink this kind of organization and create more connection. So the institution can drive with policy that, for example, stimulate this kind of organization and to work with them, and then create a new culture within the company itself. Obviously, it will take time, but I think that there are many examples and positive examples that we have, and even if we are still fragmented and there is no a whole vision that we can provide also to the external, to an external audience, for example. So we have to learn and collaborate more, and we don't have don't have to do it just because there is a pandemic, I think. But we have to do this and change the way we design the business, for example, and work mostly on a competitive layer, instead of only on competition with the neighbors. Neighbors could be useful friends and compete, but co-compete is better.
Okay. Many thanks. We are got to the end of this second table. Thank you all and see you later. Many thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye Nancy.
Bye.
Bye Luca. Ciao Federica.
Thank you.
Bye.